I'm mad at Asian Americans because why are we so smart but so silent? What's with the silence? I suspect that if we opened our mouths, we would side with black people and other brown people as the real American heroes. Yeah, we're brown, not white. But this would disrupt the white supremacy brainwash we're caught in. And deep down, we hate ourselves for siding with whiteness. We know they're wrong. Our silence is the sound of us hating ourselves. But that's the Squid Game trap that they set for us, an Asian American matrix that messes with our reality. And it's all based on hating black people. You know, the ones we're all secretly trying to copy, even the white peoples. White supremacy isn't smart, but it's tricky like that. Do you like being tricked? I don't know any Asians who put up with that. We gotta decolonize ourselves and find Asian joy. Therein lies our voice.
This idea that black people have to earn their way out of racism is completely backwards. So I understand you as saying that if, as the result of the actions of some people, a group has acquired the reputation for harming other people, then the negative attitudes and treatment the entire group receives is understandable and justified. And what's more, if that group wants those negative attitudes and treatments to change, they have to do better. I highly suggest that you re-examine this belief in light of the fact that at the point at which Europeans labeled black people black, and by extension labeled themselves white, they are the ones who proceeded to loot, kill, and grape their way around 84% of the world for centuries. Because I don't think you feel that it would justify if people of the global majority were to treat white people the way that white people have treated black people, and maybe consider yourself lucky that we don't. Now, with respect to these black crime rates that people like you so love to inflate, if racism were to cease to exist today, those crime rates would automatically and instantly drop, because we wouldn't have innocent black people being arrested and incarcerated for nothing, and we wouldn't have black people being arrested and incarcerated for infractions that white people get away with all the time. But also, if you systematically oppress a group of people for centuries, it will create negative behaviors, and it shows the infinite grace of black people that it hasn't created more. And what's more, the people that it harms the most are black people themselves. So if you want these crime rates to drop, it is racism that has to cease to exist first.
Oh yeah guys, welcome back to Eve's Diary. I hope you're all doing good. So in this video we are just here to break down this growing conversation that is shaking long-held assumptions about race, privilege and suffering. You know, for decades many believed poverty, instability and systemic hardship were problems meant only for black communities. But today, as economic pressure, social breakdown and uncertainty hit wider groups, those beliefs are being openly questioned. So guys, we are here to react to these clips, online discussions where some whites and Asian voices are reflecting, expressing regret and even asking for forgiveness, admitting they misunderstood the realities black people have warned about for generations. It's not about attacking anyone, it's about accountability, awareness and the consequences of ignoring history and lived experiences. What happens when the quiet part is finally said out loud, and what lessons are being learned too late? Kindly watch till the end for honest commentary, social analysis and unfiltered reactions. Let's get into the clips. Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments, like, subscribe and turn on notifications for more real conversations. Let's get into the video.
First of all, no racial group is a monolith. There are Asians who study hard, there are Asians who don't. There are black people who study hard, and there are black people who don't. And second of all, can we take a step back and recognize how ridiculous it is to compare racial groups in a country that have completely different backgrounds and histories? But in the US, among high selectivity immigrants, African immigrants actually have a higher education level than East Asian immigrants, and in particular Nigerian immigrants have a higher education level than Chinese and South Korean immigrants. So it has nothing to do with Asian or black. But do you know why we started comparing Asians and black people in the United States? It's because in the 1950s and 60s, when the United States was engaging in military actions in Korea, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, bringing democracy to Asia and fighting against communism, as the civil rights movement gained in momentum and attention, people around the world started wondering, with all of the racism and injustice in the United States, who are Americans to go to any other country and tell them how to be? So the United States said, no, Chinese Americans and Japanese Americans are being great. You can look, they're not protesting. They're quiet, they're working hard, they're living their lives, and they're doing fine. The problem is the loud, angry, protesting black people. And do you notice how the model minority myth only ever goes in one direction to make black people look bad? Because let's take the model Asian who studies really hard. Do you know who else they're studying much harder than? white people. In 2021, among 18 to 24-year-olds, college enrollment among Asian Americans was 60%, among white people it was 38%, and among black people it was 37%. So among white and black people it was about the same. But struggling white people do not get told you would be doing better if you were more like Asian Americans with their strong family values and their emphasis on academics. As a matter of fact, when Asians get compared to white people, Asian success is an indication that Asians are stealing opportunities and resources from white people and that we don't belong here.
I've seen a few comments like this with, Asians and black people fighting in my comment section. And honestly, it shows how little we actually talk about the history behind all of this. The tension didn't just magically appear. It was shaped by decades of laws, segregation, stereotypes, and political narratives that pushed our communities apart. When Asian immigrants first came to the US, they weren't allowed to live just anywhere. Segregation forced them into black and brown neighborhoods because those are the only areas open to anyone who wasn't white. So Asians and black Americans were physically close, but not always connected. Different languages, different histories, limited communication, misunderstandings grew out of that. Then in the 1960s, during the Civil Rights Movement, the US created the model minority myth. The idea that Asian Americans were successful, quiet, and proof that racism doesn't exist. That stereotype was never meant to lift Asians up. It was meant to contrast Asians against black Americans and basically say, see, they're doing fine, why can't you? It was a political tool that built resentment and pressure on both sides, even though neither community created that narrative. At the same time, anti-blackness already existed in some Asian cultures because of colonialism, colorism, and Western media influence. And for some black Americans, their only interactions with Asians were through local businesses, corner stores, nail salons, restaurants, situations that were transactional, not relational. That created frustration and stereotypes on both sides. But here's the thing. In both communities, it's only a small handful of people who are actually hateful or racist. A few loud, ignorant individuals do not represent millions of us. We can't let the worst examples define entire communities. Then COVID hit and all of this got amplified again. Anti-Asian hate skyrocketed. Elderly Asians were attacked, harassed, and blamed for the virus, all because of fear and political scapegoating. Some of the viral videos showed attackers who were black, and suddenly that tiny number of incidents turned into a whole narrative online like black people hate Asians, which was inaccurate and unfair. What people forget is that black activists and black organizations publicly stood with Asian communities during that time. People protested for us. They protected Asian elders. They spoke out against the hate. But the media rarely highlighted the solidarity, only the violence. And yes, some Asians responded by generalizing those incidents and blaming the entire black community, which made things even worse, even though the majority of...
I can honestly say that I truly, truly appreciate the black community and being in support of understanding what the Asian community is going through. Mainly because we don't deserve your kindness. We don't deserve the amount of gratitude, the moral support, the kindness that you have provided us on all levels of platform when it comes to being so relatable. Simply because of all of the racist shit that you guys have endured from our community in its own. We don't deserve it, because even coming from a family of immigrants, for our family to come here to the States and to either piggyback, hop on, ignoring all of those things and not acknowledging a problem of us being racist to black Americans, but immigrating from a whole nother country and then just developing a whole racist mindset because of what white Americans have planted is freaking insane. So we don't deserve your guys' kindness. We don't deserve this. So when I say that I'm truly, truly appreciative and I really, really do admire the amount of support that we have been getting, I truly mean it. For a while now, I understood that even for myself, that I have appropriated black culture, and however that may look, right? As simply as being given permission from some of my black friends to use the N-word, to talking, dressing, and just really trying to find a way to be actually accepted by the black community because my own community wouldn't accept me, So when I found a group of people that's willing to accept me for who I am, I wanted to be so relatable that I pretty much just pushed myself into appropriating some of the things of your own culture, when in reality, the black community honestly just accepted me for who I was, regardless of whatever it may be. And now that I've been healing from the type of environment that I've grown from, I apologize for ever overstepping any type of boundaries, to ever make it seem like it was ever okay to appropriate anything of the Black community. And that's why I feel like it's so important that we really need to acknowledge that we do not deserve this amount of kindness that the Black community has given us, to support that, like, hey, you know what, we know what you're going through, we are here for you, we understand, because we have done some fucked up shit. And at this point, it doesn't even matter if it's the East Asians, the Southeast Asians. We all took a part of that. Do you know what I'm saying? Even with the divide between East Asians and Southeast Asians, and how Southeast Asians are actually looked upon the East Asians, it doesn't matter at that point, because overall, we are all one community here in America. You know, in the States, we're in one community. Which is why it's important that we have to honestly talk about all these things. We have to talk about things that our people have done and hold ourselves accountable, so that way we can actually move forward into creating a more unified society. In America, we need to do that. And I'm not also just talking about the Asian community. I'm also noting any other families of immigrants that come here. You guys all understand and know that your families also came here and went along with all of the racism that exists in America, and they went along with it for whatever reason why they did, right? Because we all have our own traumas and we all have a different ways of survival. We all did it. But now in this new society, it is our job to make sure it doesn't get any further than what it has been. This is all of the immigrants. This is the Hispanics. This is the Muslims, Arabs, Jewish, Asians. All of us need to come together and really acknowledge that. For the sake of the future, we have to do that. So for the white people who don't understand, like, you guys need to all inclusively accept accountability for it, because your people were the ones that for generations, hundreds of years, starting from slavery up until now, your families have been teaching generations of racist shit, to the point where immigrants come over and they adapt that type of mentality. You have to hold yourself accountable. And unfortunately, yes, you do have to pay for it. You have to hold yourself accountable the same way how the Asian community existing right now needs to be accountable of all the racist shit that we have done too. Because that's the only way to fix that. You need to acknowledge it and you have to put in the work. So as much as you're trying to prove to us that you're not one of those people, you need to prove it to your people why they shouldn't be like that. You don't need to be advocating to us. You don't need to be advocating to any other person of color. You need to advocate it to your own people, because the person who told me if it wasn't for you effing Chinese people because of COVID shutdown, that was 5 years ago. He still exists in this world. He's still planting those little seeds with those little remarks out here in this world from 5 years ago. He didn't go anywhere. He's not like he died. So yes, this conversation has truly evolved into something for me. And I just feel like it would be doing a disservice for someone who's just talking about like the whole Asian market and stuff and not really acknowledging that elephant in the room.
You know, guys, for a long time, there was an unspoken belief in society, a belief that poverty, suffering, instability, and struggle were problems that belonged somewhere else, that hardship had a face and it was not theirs. So many people were taught directly or indirectly that struggle was something Black communities were supposed to endure, manage, and survive quietly. And because it did not touch them personally, it was easy to ignore, to dismiss, or even to downplay. But today, something has changed. Yes, as economic pressure spreads, jobs disappear, systems fail, and the cost of living rises, more people are facing realities they once believed they were protected from. Suddenly, the struggles that were once labeled as Black problems are being experienced across communities. And with that realization comes shock, confusion, and in some cases, regret. Online, we are seeing conversations that rarely happened before. People openly admitting they were wrong, acknowledging that warnings were ignored, recognizing that suffering does not discriminate the way they thought it did. Not because Black people wished this on anyone, but because systems built on inequality eventually collapse on everyone. Yes. So what is interesting is not the suffering itself, but the surprise. The surprise reveals how deeply some myths were believed, that proximity to privilege meant immunity, that silence meant safety, that ignoring injustice somehow guaranteed protection. But history has always shown the opposite. When one group is crushed under the weight of inequality, the system does not stop there. It expands, it spreads, it consumes. And now, many are realizing that the struggles black communities spoke about weren't exaggerations, they were warnings. Yes, so some voices are now asking for forgiveness, not just from blacks, but from reality itself. Forgiveness for mocking pain, for dismissing protests, for calling survival complaining, for believing suffering had a racial boundary. But forgiveness is not just about words, it's about understanding, it's about learning, and it's about not repeating the same mistakes when the pressure eases again. So, this moment is not about celebrating anyone's pain, and it's not about saying, "We told you so." It's about clarity and about finally seeing that inequality is not a spectator sport, that ignoring injustice does not protect you, it delays the impact, and that when systems are allowed to harm one group unchecked, everyone eventually pays the price. Yes. So the question now is not who was wrong in the past. The question is, what will people do with understanding going forward? Will lessons be remembered or forgotten again when comfort returns? That part is still being written. Yeah, so guys, thank you so much for watching. Of course, all credit belongs to the original creators of the video. This video is meant for educational purposes and commentary purposes as well. Kindly give the video a thumbs up, like the video, share the video widely for you to get to a wider audience, and subscribe and turn on that notification bell so that you don't miss on the next one. Thank you. Peace be with you until the next one.